On paper, the Lakers shouldn't be this good. But let's be real, they might actually be scary. Sure, the roster isn't stacked with endless depth like some Western Conference contenders, and yes, the defensive holes are obvious. But make no mistake, this team is going to matter. They're going to be a real player in the West. The reason? Two names: Luka Doncic and LeBron James. Luka is walking into a straight-up revenge season. All off-season, we've been hearing about how he's transformed his body, locked in like never before. And if you watched him dominate Eurobasket, you saw it with your own eyes. This is the best Luka we've ever seen, no debate. The numbers were absurd: 34.7 points, 8.6 rebounds, 7.1 assists per game. And here's the kicker: those games are only 40 minutes long. That's 8 fewer minutes than NBA games, and he still put up those kinds of God-level stats. And then there's LeBron, year 23. Most guys are retired or washed by this point. But LeBron? He's still very much a top 15 player in the world. Add in Luka's prime and LeBron's timeless dominance, and suddenly this Lakers team has the kind of 1-2 punch that can't be ignored. On paper, this Lakers team really shouldn't be this good. But the reality? They might actually be scarier than anyone expected. The roster isn't as deep as some of the West contenders, and the defensive flaws are still clear. Yet this group is absolutely going to matter, because Luka Doncic and LeBron James give them a 1-2 punch that can flip the entire conference. Let's start with Luka. What we saw from him at Eurobasket wasn't just good, it was terrifying. He averaged nearly 35 points, 9 rebounds, and 7 assists in games that are shorter than NBA contests. And remember, Slovenia didn't have much NBA talent outside of Luka, yet he still dragged them deep into the tournament against squads loaded with pros. What stood out wasn't just the numbers, but the way he looked: faster, sharper, explosive. There were moments where he grabbed a rebound, pushed coast to coast, and finished with ease, plays he wasn't making last season. That added burst, combined with his improved conditioning, means two things. Luka now has more left in the tank for late-game situations, and he's in a far better position to avoid nagging injuries that have slowed him down in the past. A healthy, locked-in Luka with a chip on his shoulder? That's a nightmare for the rest of the NBA. And make no mistake, this is a revenge season for him. Dallas may have had their reasons for moving on, but the way they did it was brutal, questioning his conditioning, his defense, and basically painting him as the problem. Luka takes that personally. He's fueled by it. And now he's back in shape, motivated, and ready to remind everyone he's a top 3 player in the world. Then you add LeBron James, year 22, 40 years old, and he still made the All-NBA second team last season, averaging 24 points, 8 rebounds, and 8 assists on efficient shooting. Every single year we ask the same question: is Father Time finally catching up? And every year, LeBron gives the same answer: not yet. What made last season even scarier was the way he embraced becoming the second option. Instead of fighting it, he leaned into it, setting screens, making reads as the roll man, doing the little things to keep Luka humming. A lot of people questioned whether these two stars could really coexist, but the numbers answered that. Together, they posted a plus 3.4 net rating across more than 1,000 possessions, with an offensive rating in the 86th percentile league-wide. The ball movement worked, the shot quality was elite, and the fit was undeniable. And let's not forget, even with flaws, this team still finished as the 3rd seed in a loaded Western Conference last season. Yes, the margin between seeds 2 and 8 was razor thin, but they found ways to win consistently. With Luka pushing toward a possible 30-point triple-double season, and LeBron still producing at an elite level, this team has enough firepower to rack up regular season wins. In a West where every game matters, that kind of consistency is a massive advantage. But here's where things get tricky. For all the positives, there are still hurdles. 3 big ones, to be exact. The first, their off-season moves didn't outweigh what they lost. Adding DeAndre Ayton, Marcus Smart, and Jake LaRavia isn't bad on paper. Those are solid additions. But the pieces they said goodbye to carried far more value. Depth, shooting, defensive reliability. Those were major losses that this current roster hasn't fully replaced. And in a conference this competitive, That gap could be the difference between finishing in the top 4 or sliding back into the play-in mix. So while the Lakers might have the star power to hang with anyone, whether or not the supporting cast holds up could ultimately decide their ceiling. And then comes one of the biggest storylines from last year, the Dorian Finney-Smith factor. I cannot stress enough just how important he was for the Lakers after arriving mid-season. His impact went far beyond the box score, because he was the glue piece that made so many of their best lineups work. Take this one example. When the Lakers rolled out Luka, Austin Reeves, Finney-Smith, Rui Hachimura, and LeBron at the 5, that group was borderline unstoppable. Over 200 possessions, they put up a plus 19.4 net rating, averaged 130 points per 100, and shot nearly 66% effective field goal percentage. That's domination. Every single player in that lineup could shoot, every single one could attack. And because LeBron and Luka constantly drew double teams, there were clean looks everywhere. Finney-Smith's value wasn't just about spacing, though. He was arguably their best perimeter defender. So when you take that kind of two-way presence out of the rotation, and worse, lose him to a conference rival like the Houston Rockets, it's a massive blow. And that transitions us straight into the second major negative for this year's Lakers, their defense. Yes, Marcus Smart is a nice addition on paper. Yes, it wasn't long ago that he was the NBA's Defensive Player of the Year. But here's the problem. Since then, he hasn't been able to stay healthy. Expecting him to suddenly be reliable for 70-plus games at age 31 as your defensive backbone? That feels more like wishful thinking than a plan. Then there's DeAndre Ayton, who the Lakers are now counting on to be their rim protector. The issue? That's never really been his game. He's always been more comfortable floating around the mid-range, shooting jump hooks, and picking his spots offensively rather than doing the dirty work inside. His motor and intensity have always been questioned. And with LeBron and Luka running the offense, he isn't going to get many touches in the post. His job will be setting screens, rolling, and protecting the rim. And historically, those haven't been his strengths compared to high-energy bigs Luka thrived with in Dallas, like Derek Lively or Daniel Gafford. So if Ayton doesn't step up and Smart can't stay on the court, you're basically asking Luka, Reeves, and a 41-year-old LeBron James to hold the line defensively. That's not a recipe for a top-tier defense. Realistically, the Lakers are going to have to outscore teams on most nights, which is a dangerous way to live in the playoffs. And finally, the third big concern, depth outside of the stars. Austin Reeves is solid, but he wore down in last year's playoffs, especially when forced to take on heavy defensive assignments. Ideally, Smart takes some of that load off so Reeves can thrive as a secondary option, but even then, he's still vulnerable against elite wings. Rui Hachimura, meanwhile, was phenomenal as a catch-and-shoot threat last year and should continue in that role. But beyond those two, things get shaky fast. The rest of the supporting cast, Gabe Vincent, Jared Vanderbilt, Dalton Connect, and Jackson Hayes, doesn't exactly scream championship-level bench. There's upside, sure. Connect flashed some real shooting potential early, but he lost his spot, was briefly dealt, and then brought back, never really reclaiming a stable role. That tells you the team isn't confident in his long-term value just yet. So when you stack it all up, losing Finney-Smith, questionable defensive anchors, and a shaky bench, the margin for error for this Lakers squad is slim. Luka and LeBron can carry them far, but if those weaknesses aren't addressed, they could be staring down the same issues that ended their run last season. When you really dig into the Lakers' supporting cast, the issues become clear. Dalton Connect's defense and overall consistency just weren't there, which is understandable for a rookie, but it makes him tough to trust in big playoff minutes. Jared Vanderbilt is a high-energy defender, but his offensive limitations are glaring. When defenses ignore you completely on one end, it's hard to justify keeping you on the floor deep into May or June. Then you have Gabe Vincent. Since joining for Miami, he just hasn't been able to stay healthy, and his year was a roller coaster of ups and downs. None of these players are terrible, But when you compare this group to the supporting cores of teams like Oklahoma City or Houston, it's clear the Lakers aren't on that same tier. They've got top-end star power, but the depth isn't strong enough, especially after losing Dorian Finney-Smith, who tied so much of last year's roster together. And then there's the defense. From day one, this is going to be an uphill battle. Marcus Smart brings toughness, but hasn't stayed healthy. DeAndre Ayton has the size, but not the consistent motor. Expecting LeBron, Luka, and Reeves to hold everything together on the back line is just asking too much. So that brings us to the big question. Where exactly do the Lakers stack up heading into this season? To answer that, you have to look back at how last year ended. When Los Angeles pulled off the blockbuster deal for Luka Doncic, the hype was immediate. Fans and analysts were calling the Lakers title contenders overnight. The move was that seismic. But reality hit hard in the playoffs. There was this brief belief that Jackson Hayes could somehow hold up as a starting center, and Luka would elevate him to being good enough. But deep down, everyone knew that wasn't realistic. And sure enough, Hayes completely fell out of the playoff rotation. That's what makes this season feel so familiar. On paper, the Lakers still don't have enough on the defensive end. As much as people rolled their eyes when Mavericks GM Nico Harrison said defense wins championships after moving Luka, he wasn't wrong. You don't necessarily need to be the number one defensive team anymore, but you can't fall too far outside the top 10. And right now, this Lakers roster doesn't look like it can get there without making a serious move at the trade deadline. That said, the positives are way too strong to ignore. Luka Doncic putting up something close to a 30-point triple-double, paired with LeBron James, who somehow, even in year 23, is still playing at a top 15 level, is going to win you a lot of games, no matter how shaky the defense is. So here's my prediction. The Lakers finish as the 6th seed in the Western Conference. Their floor is slipping into the play-in, but their ceiling, if everything clicks, and they make one smart deadline move, is a run to the conference finals, putting them in position to legitimately chase a title. But if we're talking about title chases, you can't overlook the Denver Nuggets. And if you want to see exactly why I think Denver is still the team to beat in the West, you'll want to check out my full Nuggets breakdown next.